So, like I said, we're breaking down Esther. We're going to go through kind of verse by verse, break down relatively quickly. If you guys have any feedback for me, I am not an expert on Esther. Once I started studying Esther, I'm like, I've never really studied this that much. So if you guys have any feedback, bring it on, okay? But I kind of broke it down in sections just like I did Samson. And if we start off just in chapter 1, these events took place during the days of Ahasuerus.
Yes,
Ahasuerus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who ruled 127 provinces from India to Kush. In those days, the king Ahasuerus reigned from his royal throne in the fortress of Susa. So, ain't much to break down there. This guy had a lot of kingdoms, 127 provinces. He's a rich dude, and we're going to find out more about how rich he was here in just a minute, because he liked his wealth, and he really liked showing it off.
He's probably going to be set
in big ways. We got verse 3. He held a feast in the 3rd year of his reign for all his officials and staff, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles and the officials from the provinces. So everyone pretty much under this guy. If you work for him, you're going to get invited to this party. And the party, it doesn't end there. He displayed the glorious wealth of his kingdom and the magnificent splendor of his greatness for a total of 180 days.
Wow.
This is a 180-day party this guy's throwing.
You know what? I vote with that.
It's a happy. Can you imagine if the president of the United States is like, guys, we're going to party from January 1st till the end of June?
Yeah, I don't think I have that much of a social battery. You know.
I would be like, no.
Hey,
This dude's ready. I would assume, like, let's say Colby is the queen here instead of the king, and she's throwing this 180-day party. I don't assume that we'd all come at the same time. I feel like, let's say Emily is from one of the 127 provinces he had. Maybe she stays for like 3 or 4 days. Then the next person comes.
So it's over.
Like the next group of people. The next group. I mean, I'm sure if the president threw a party for the United States, he's not going to invite all 50 states at once. It's like, oh, the people from Mississippi, come on down. And then...
I don't think they're bro.
You're next on my party. But yeah. And it literally says here, this guy is very prideful. The Bible does not like prideful people. And in verse 4, he displayed the glorious wealth of his kingdom. Okay, your kingdom is rich. But then the next part, and the magnificent splendor of his greatness. This dude might be a little cocky. I'm not sure though.
No.
If anyone wants to display their magnificent splendor
Of your greatness.
of your greatness, Logan, how magnificently splendorous are you?
Not very. 1 out of 10.
So we got verse 5. At the end of this time, so a 180-day party, at the end of this time, the king held a week-long banquet. So he's not done yet. 180 days in. He's like, we're going to have a week-long banquet
Grand finale.
in the garden courtyard. So this 180 days has been for all his officials, right? In the garden courtyard of the royal palace for all the people from the greatest to the least. So let's say Emily is a fancy, like she's one of the princesses of one of the provinces, and then we have Shelby, who is a peasant. Sorry, Shelby.
Yeah.
I am anyways.
But they are both invited to this party. Like, it doesn't matter how small of a role you have in his kingdom to how big of a role. Everyone is invited. This last 7 days is going to be a party.
What are they doing for the 180 days?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be full this time. So, let me find where I'm at. From the greatest to the least, who were present in the fortress of Susa. So they all got to go to his own place here. Like, we all got invited to the White House, and for some reason it told us this place must have been huge. And then in verse 6, white and violet linen hangings were fastened with fine white and purple linen cords to the silver rods of marble columns Gold and silver couches were arranged on the mosaic pavement of red, feldspar, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones.
So it's fancy.
So it's just fancy. I mean, think of the fanciest thing you ever seen and kick it up a couple notches. He is showing everyone why he is king and how great the kingdom is doing. Verse 7, drinks were served in an array of gold goblets, which goblet is a hilarious word in my opinion, but it's just a fancy cup. No clue why it's called a goblet. Each with different design, royal wine flowed freely, according to the king's bounty. The drinking was according to royal decree. There are no restrictions. The king had ordered every wine steward in his household to serve whatever each person wanted.
There's some drunk dudes.
Yeah, the wine flowed. These guys, all the people in the kingdom, got as much wine as possible.
You'd never have a hangover.
I just want to know how they stocked all this stuff. Because this is a big kingdom.
He has
Like-
127 provinces.
Yeah.
Were they all making wine for the last forever?
They probably have it split up by province, by what area can do what.
Yeah. It's,
When they're drinking next water.
Man, what do the kids do?
well, the kids did they
Well,
had
there was
babies.
no restrictions, Jesse.
Yo, boy, them suckers.
This kind of party?
I forgot. Alright. So, in verse 9, Queen Vashti also gave a feast for all the women of King Ahasuerus' palace. So, it says here, I assume the women and the men were split up. I don't know.
Yes.
What?
It would have been very typical back then. So the women got to party as well. So everyone is just having a party, a good time. And verse 10. On the seventh day, the king was feeling good from the wine.
I'm surprised he hasn't died. I mean, for half a year, alcohol plays party.
Be like at your back door the whole time.
He is,
Yeah.
he is getting real drunk at this point. He's getting kind of dangerous. Like, you do not want your king drunk. Ahasuerus commanded Mehuman.
There's a bunch of big old.
There's a bunch of names here. I'm sorry. Prepare for me to butcher these, okay? Ahasuerus commanded Mehuman, Bismuth, Biztha, Harbana, Bigtha, Avagtha, Zethar, and Carcass.
Who's named
The 7 eunuchs who personally served him. They're his personal 7 servants here with these terrible names. He tells them, verse 11, to bring King Vashti before him. Queen. I apologize. Queen Vashti before him with her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and the officials because she was very beautiful. So this dude's like, I have this beautiful wife. I want her to come in here and show off just how wonderful my wife is because I have all this money. Now they get to see how awesome my wife is. And verse 12, but Queen Vashti refused to come to the king's commands that was delivered by his eunuchs. The king became furious and his anger burned within him. So she says, forget you. You're drunk. I don't care what you're going to do. I can kind of imagine what she told him. She does not want to be shown off like some prize, which is very understandable. And he's very upset. I mean, his anger burned within him. And this is what he decides. Because back then, girls, you have it much better now. Because back then, women had like no rights and the king could do whatever he wanted. He could have just had her killed. He liked her enough not to quite do that. But he's also, at this time, when he's so angry, he's also very drunk. I mean, he is, because I noticed something here that makes me feel like he was very, very drunk. Because in verse 13, the king consulted the wise men who understood the times, for it was his normal procedure to confer with the experts in the law and justice. So he goes before his most highest, like, you guys work for me and you kind of know how the law works. What should I do about this? So he's still upset. 14, the most trusted ones were
Oh my.
Hold on, let me say some more names. Karshina, Shithar, Admatha, Tarshish, Mariz, Marcina, and Mimukin. They were the 7 officials of Persia, the Media, who had personally access to the king and occupied the highest positions in the kingdom. So his top people, like, if anyone here can tell me the top 7 spots below the president, good job, but I cannot. So these are like vice president times 7. So the king asked, according to the law, what should be done with Queen Vashti, since she refused to obey King Ahasuerus' command that was delivered by the eunuch. So he's talking about himself in the third person here. That kind of cracked me up. He's like, what should we do about the queen? He himself says, what should we do about the queen since she disobeyed King Ahasuerus'
Oh, I
commands?
never noticed that.
He
So
is-
high and mighty.
He is talking to himself in the third person. And then Memucan said, in the presence of the king and his officials, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but all the officials and the peoples who are in every one of King Ahasuerus' provinces. For the queen's actions will become public knowledge to all the women and cause them to despise their husbands and say, King Ahasuerus ordered Queen Vashti brought before him, but she did not come. So they're now scared that all the women are going to uprise because the queen kind of rebelled against her husband, so now they're getting scared. They're scared of you ladies.
Sure.
Yeah, but as they should be.
Yeah. So, before this day is over, the noble women of Persia and Media who hear about the queen's acts will say the same thing to all the king's officials, resulting in more contempt and fury. So they are, like I said, very scared this time.
Do you think all the women are gonna revolt?
All the women are going to revolt.
Chug.
Stop.
That's probably what they were saying at the party.
And then he tells the king, if it meets the king's approval, he should personally issue a royal decree. Let be recorded that the laws of Persia and Media, so that it cannot be revoked. Vashti is not to enter the king Ahasuerus' presence, and her royal position is to be given to another woman who is more worthy than she. The decree of the king, the decree the king issues will be heard throughout the vast kingdom. So all the women will honor their husbands from the greatest to the least. So they're pretty much deploying a scare tactic on the women because they are scared of the women. But in verse 21, the king and his counselors approved the proposal. They're like, oh, this sounds like a wonderful idea. We can't have the women getting rowdy. So they followed Memucan's advice. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to each province in its own script, and each ethnic group in its own language, because the kingdom would have been so big there were multiple languages, that every man should be master of his own house and speak in the language of his own people. So they send it out where everyone can understand and tell everyone that, the queen got kicked out, so you better behave. Is kind of how I take it. And that is the end of chapter 1 right there. So the queen is kicked out. This is where, the beginning of chapter 2 is where I can see the king was very drunk when he did all this. I think he went straight to his people. He was so upset that he went. He's like, I need a meeting right now. And he's probably speaking all slurred and drunken. And his officials are like, oh, we can do this. And the king's like, wonderful. But in verse 2, and sometime later, when King Ahasuerus' rage had cooled down, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decided against her. It took him a while to remember this. So it makes me feel like he was probably very drunk.
Where did you think his wife disappeared?
I don't know. He was like, what? Man, my head hurts. What happened to her? Oh, yeah. I got mad. So I just feel like that just tells me he was very drunk. Or maybe he was so mad that he was kind of out of his mind. I'm not sure. But normally drunk people can get very mad. So it was probably just a bad combination on the king's part there. So the king's personal attendants, so he is missing his wife, I would say. The king's personal attendants suggested, because they said, let her position be given to another woman, suggested, let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in each province in his kingdom, so that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem at the fortress of Susa. Put them under the supervision of Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of the women, and give them the required beauty treatments. So they decide, hey, this is a great plan. Why don't we gather up all the pretty ladies and just
All the sweet honeys.
gather them up and take them before the king. This will really impress him. And of course the king wholeheartedly agrees here. He's like, yes, let us do this. It's a wonderful idea. Then the young woman who pleases the king will become queen instead of Vashti. This suggestion pleased the king, and he did it accordingly. He's like, this is the best idea y'all have ever had.
He's
I
like
approve."
America's Got Talent for wives.
Yes, and he's got the golden buzzer.
I mean, that's how
That is
VeggieTales
the best
did it,
example.
What?
VeggieTales, they had a singing contest.
That's
They
true.
did. There we go.
I can't ever think
Hubby
of
is
this. I know the song you're talking about. So they take them to this place. They gather up all the women. I would just like to say I thought of something. It literally says they gathered up anyone who they thought was pretty across all the provinces. So there's a lot of women here. They already got 127 provinces. You know what really was terrible? Think about all the single dudes running around in that age group. All the women just disappeared. Except for the ugly ones. You're just stuck. It's like, I want to know, did the girls who did not get picked and taken to the king's palace get offended? They're like,
It's not very nice. Well, everybody is like, did they come up with a list of these are the kind of girls I want? Like, how did, like, one guy might think a girl is pretty that another guy might not be into.
that doesn't matter, they'll just take them all. The more you got, the better odds you got. But like, I can just imagine, like, a girl being like, they're like, hey, the king's gonna gather up all the women and see which one he likes. And they're like, that's just terrible. That's such a terrible thing. I don't even want to go. And then they get left and they're like, that's offensive.
The fact that you play a girl very well.
It is when they're offended.
Excuse me.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm gonna make sure and do that next time.
So, ladies, you heard it here first. Next time you're offended. I have a feeling after class, all y'all are gonna come up to me.
I don't see why I don't just get all of them.
Well,
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Okay.
So, he's got all these people. Let me find where I'm at. Verse 5. I'm running out of time, so we're going to have to help. They gathered them in the fortress of Susa. There was a Jewish man named Mordecai, son of Jair? J-A-I-R? Son of Shimei, son of Kish, the Benjamin. So this guy is a Jew. He had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the other captives of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Hold on. When King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took King Jeconiah, there's a lot of words here, of Judah into exile. Verse 7, Mordecai was the legal guardian of his cousin, Hadassah, that is Esther. I didn't actually know her name was Hadassah, and I personally know Hadassah, and that makes it cooler that I know her.
Huh?
I know someone named Hadassah.
Really?
Yeah, because
Medusa.
It's not different.
because she had no father or mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was extremely good looking. When her father and mother died, Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter. So, how is Mordecai and Esther related?
Cousin daughter.
What? Well, he claimed her as his daughter.
Exactly.
Incorrect.
Wait, what?
It's always been
Cousins.
stated uncle. Like, since I was a kid, everyone's like, oh, it's always her uncle. It's her uncle's son. It's her cousin. They just have a big age gap.
Oh, I'll say, well, hang on.
So it's always, like, since I was little, it's always been uncle. But I found out one day on my own, and I was like, Dad, I've been lied to. It's her cousin. So it's her cousin, and verse 8, when the king's command and edict, I don't know what that word means, became public
like
knowledge,
decree.
and when many young women were gathered at the fortress of Susa under Haggai's supervision, Esther was taken to her palace, Esther was taken to the palace into the supervision of Haggai, keeper of the women. The young woman pleased him and gained his favor so that he accelerated the process of beauty treatments and special diet that she received. He assigned 7 hand-picked female servants to her from the palace and transferred her and her servants to the Harlem's best quarters. So, you can look in the Old Testament in several different spots. Normally people who serve God were always very well liked and very well favored. You can look at Joseph all the time. You can look at her. Like, she was amongst all these other girls, but she did stuff different where this guy was like, oh, this one seems good. She ended up getting 7 personal servants before she won this deal or anything, and got put in the best rooms, like, oh, just give her everything she needs. And we'll talk about it here in a minute, but like, these girls had to go through, I think, 6 or 12 months, they'll say here in a minute, of like preparation for the king. They're like, oh, we're gonna make you super pretty. They would like lotion their skin. They want to be as soft as possible, just absolutely like perfect for the king here. In verse 10, Esther did not reveal her ethnicity or her family's background, so she didn't tell anyone that she's a Jew, because Mordecai had ordered her not to make it known. Every day Mordecai took a walk in front of the Harlem's courtyard to learn how Esther was doing and see what was happening to her. So every day he would go check on her. He told her, hey, it's probably not smart to tell him you're a Jew right now, so don't do that. And she is a good girl and obeyed. And I always thought it was weird because, like, I didn't see, like, he was a Jew. I assume they knew that. I don't know, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't. Either they knew he was a Jew and they didn't know they were related, or they didn't know he was a Jew. I'm not sure which. But, so he'd go by every day and just kind of check on her. And, okay, so it was a full year here. Here's the description of what they did for these women to get them ready. During the year before, each young woman, we good over here?
No.
Each young woman turned to go to King Ahasuerus. The beauty treatments, Harlem regulation required her to receive beauty treatments with oil of myrrh for 6 months, and then with perfumes and cosmetics for another 6 months.
My goodness.
I don't know why they drowned these girls in perfume. Did they think, like,
Did they die?
do you absorb perfume and I'm missing something?
You spray it and you walk into the city.
Girl perfume is just like not strong enough. So they just
No.
No,
Some of them are like super strong and you're just so, like,
and you
want
walk
to
through like the
go
locker room,
so
girls are just like, oh.
There are some girls
In
that
the
don't so
locker
much, and
room?
I'm like,
Okay, just imagine being in the locker room for 6 months right here.
Wait, so they're soaking in a bathtub full of perfume.
Pretty much.
That's built different.
So they went under these treatments. When the young woman would go to the king, she was given whatever she requested to take with her from the harem to the palace. She would go in the evening, and in the morning she would return to the second harem under the supervision of the king's eunuch Shashgaz, Shaashgaz, Shashgaz, keeper of the concubines. She never went to the king again unless he desired her and summoned her by name. So all these girls, they were all virgins, never been with a dude. They're with the king very first time, and then they were put away forever unless he liked her. So this was a terrible deal. This is an all or nothing for these girls. They were put away in quarters, I guess, for the rest of their life.
Are they? It says they never went to the king again.
Yeah, but they were put in the, they were put under this guy's supervision. Not in the torture chamber.
They became concubines?
Yes.
I've never given that any thought.
This is all or nothing for these girls. If they didn't impress the king, they were a one-night stand. As far as I'm aware. I could be lying to you here, but that's how I take it. Would you say yes?
I don't know.
Hang on, I'm so confused what's going on right now.
You're not listening.
So he went like one by one every day.
Yep.
Okay. I thought he just.
Every day. They got a lot of them.
I thought they just went on stage and just got a good look.
They went to him in the evening. Went to him in the evening. In the morning, they were done with him. Or he was. So maybe not. I might be reading out of context here, but I think they were just kind of like, oh, you guys, you're good. To have a nice life. And
Man, I would have hoped I was one of the ugly ones.
Exactly. Or Esther. You have two choices, ugly or Esther. You don't want to be in the middle. So we got verse 15. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter. So I give her a description again. When her turn came to go to the king, she did not ask for anything except for what Haggai, the guy who she found favor in that helped her out all this time, except for what Haggai, the king's eunuch, keeper of the women, suggested. Esther gained the favor in the eyes of everyone who saw her. So she was something special. It went beyond her looks. I mean, just anyone who was around her was like, oh, this girl is something. So she was taken to the king Ahasuerus in the palace in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So this has been going on. If you want to think about it, I don't know how fast this decree went. Let's say they got on it right away. The women was there for a year. We're getting into the 4th to 5th year. So this has been going on. These women every day have been going on for close to 2 years at this point. So this guy's went through
Oh my God.
500 women.
I just comprehended. I'm like, holy cow.
Show every day.
So verse 17. The king, he's like I said, it's been going on for a couple years. The king loved Esther more than all the other women. She won more favor and approval from him than did any of the other virgins. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen in place of Vashti. The king held a great banquet for all his officials and staff. It was Esther's banquet. He freed his provinces from tax payments and gave gifts worthy of the king's bounty. So the king is in a very good mood. He is like, I finally found a real sweet honey. And
We're gonna live that down.
You'll be out of this class. We'll still be talking about sweet honey.
We got it on video.
20 years later.
Good point.
We're showing it at your wedding.
184.
All right. So
None of it
he's in a very good mood. He gives gifts out to the kingdom. He lowers the taxes. And then we go into verse 19 here. We got only 3 more verses. When the virgins were gathered a second time. So I'm not sure what was going on here. Why they were gathered a second time. Maybe they all got let go. I don't know. But Mordecai, or maybe they ran out the first time. All right, get the second wave. But Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not revealed her family's background or her ethnicity that Mordecai had directed. She obeyed Mordecai's orders, and she always had while he raised her. So she listened to him. She thought of him as a father. During those days, while Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan, 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 and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who guarded the entrance, became infuriated and planned to assassinate King Ahasuerus. When Mordecai learned of the plot, he reported it to Queen Esther, and so I'm not sure because it wasn't a second wave then, because she was already queen. I thought this might be before, but I didn't catch that he told it to Queen Esther. So I'm not sure. If I'm guessing, these girls probably got let go since they gathered them all up again. But I can't tell you that for sure.
Well, I wouldn't think you would keep like 500 random women forever.
There's a lot of kings who did it back then.
It's been done.
But either way, he told Queen Esther, and she told the king on Mordecai's behalf. And when the report was investigated and verified, both men were hung on the gallows that evening. This evening was reported in the historical record in the king's presence. So they figured out these guys are guilty of this, and they hung them.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
On that note.
It is not.
Oh, nice.
That is it for this week. Yes.
Really?
Jesse's question
Did they just hug them?
Not like
Well, what else is he gonna do? He's dead.
They hung Big Fan.
I'm not sure.
Big thing.
I've learned from this lesson.
You're not sure what you've learned about this lesson. Well,
The
yeah.
women go like this with your mouth.
Yeah. Apparently.
Yes.
I don't know.
What did men do then? When we were offended.
The cry.
That's
Like every southern grandma.
If we do this, you cry.
Alright. So I will tell you. Like Jesse says, Jesse's asking, what do I take from this lesson? What did I learn? Well, one thing we broke down Esther, just because it was requested. Not all of Esther, obviously. We still got more to go. But you're going to learn and take more of it as we get farther into the story. We're just 2 chapters in. Samson, we had specific things each time because it was a very condensed thing. At this time, we're halfway through Samson. We still got quite a bit of Esther to go. So you get more into it. I mean, this just leaves you hanging. 2 dudes just got hung. Come back next week to figure out who else dies. So, and you got to hear me butcher some names, and you got to figure out some names that you'll name your children one day, like Big Fan.
At least it wasn't as violent as
And what was that one? Mishaz or something. Shazgaz. That's my personal favorite. But Esther is here. Like, she has it all at this point. She is the queen, and you think that could be it for her story. But there's plenty more coming. And she isn't in the best place at all. I mean, she is queen of this place. Obviously, we've already learned that queens in this time don't matter that often. They got that one lady got kicked out and for not showing up to one thing. So that's kind of, she's in a hostile place because of that. And on top of that, she's a Jew, which was looked down more upon back then. And no one knows that. That's going to be a real surprise to her husband. And one thing you got to remember, I mean, we'll get into it farther, but she's in a hard situation here. But God never left her at all. I mean, God was with her. He had a plan for it. This was not the ideal situation for Esther. I guarantee you she would have rather had a different life than this. I don't know how old Esther was. We don't know what background Esther has. We don't know. For all you know, you can put Esther in. For situations like this, I kind of let my mind think of different situations she could have been in. She could have been Victoria's age. She could have been younger. She could have been a little older. You don't know. Maybe she had a boy that she planned to marry, and then she got whisked away out of nowhere to this kingdom to go be in this luck of the draw, who impresses the king more contest. And it was not easy for her. It was a very scary situation. I mean, I guarantee it, that was not like, there wasn't the news or anything back then. It's not like you could flip on the TV and be like, oh, the king is hosting this thing. Some guys just seen you out on the street or knocked on your door and said, hey, you're pretty good looking, come with us. And you're like, okay, come with us. Or they probably threatened her or her family or whatever. You're going to get forced to come. So she's in a very scary situation. But she knew God was with her and knew that He's going to use this situation. One thing that really is weird about Esther to me is she listed in the name of the greats, in the Old Testament greats? I don't know. She goes on to do some awesome stuff as we go farther in. But her book, according to Dad, and I'm pretty sure he's correct, never mentions God once. God is not mentioned in her book. But God, you can tell, still directed her, and she put her faith into God, and you just know that, like, her and Mordecai had a good background with God, or they would have freaked out and panicked. And you see that through what she did. I mean, you see that through, she must have awesome works, or everyone wouldn't have been like, oh, this girl is awesome, and found favor with every single person she came across. It literally says she found favor with anyone who came across her. Is she in there? Okay. But there is different things we can take from Esther. One thing, as soon as Julie finds it, I'll talk to you guys a little bit more.
I don't think it is.
She's not? Okay. I didn't know if she was or not. So I didn't know if she was in the list.
I may be overlooking, but I don't think so.
I want everybody to bow your head for me. We're going to wrap up. I'll talk to you for a second. Close your eyes. Nobody looking around. Please and thank you. I appreciate it. But there are times, like I said, this was a scary situation for Esther. She did not know what she was going to do, I guarantee it. At this point, we haven't had much background on Esther yet. We're just 2 chapters in. But we can just imagine. She is a teenage girl who got through in this situation at a random time, and she didn't really know what was going on. She was put in the kingdom or the palace for a year before anything happened. And my only question is for tonight, maybe you are in a spot in your life where you don't exactly know what's going on. You don't know why you're in the situation you're in. Maybe it's a deal you're dealing with at school. Maybe it's a thing you're dealing with your family. But you don't exactly know how God's going to use you. And you're kind of failing at the whole trust deal. I guarantee you there was times when Esther thought, I don't know what I'm doing here. But you want to have faith that God will use you in your situation. And you want to ask God for help in your situation, that you can see how He's going to use it. Because there are all kinds of different situations where God can use you. And maybe they're not always the way you planned them to be. But when you get to see that big picture, you're going to see where things went just right and ended just how they were supposed to be. But if you're in one of those situations and you feel like you don't really know what's going on in your life and you're not sure how God's going to use it, and you're kind of in a scared situation and you want to try your best to put your faith in God that He's going to pull you through it and use you exactly where He wants to and use whatever you're going through, go ahead and raise your hand for me. Keep them up for just a moment. All right, lower. I appreciate you guys being honest with me. That's honestly a fairly big question. It is not in human nature for you to want to admit, hey, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I don't know what situation is going on. Us as humans, we like to think, I can handle it. And even when we can't handle it, us as humans like to think that everyone else thinks you can handle it. And just being able to admit that you don't exactly know what's happening, but you want to put your faith in God that He's going to pull you through it, Whether it's that hard situation at school, or that hard situation with your family, or your friends, that's a big step. And I just want to tell you guys that God is with you. If you ever need anything, me and Julie have got your guys' back, and we both love you guys very much. We're going to pray, and we're going to dismiss. We're a few minutes early, but that's okay. Lord, thank you for all the blessings you've given us. I just want to ask that you pour out your presence in each one of the people's lives that's here tonight. Just flood their souls, that they could know next time they're in that scary situation that you have control over it, that they could know that your hand is with them and you will guide them and not let them fall, as long as they're willing to put you first there. I want to thank you for giving us this awesome group tonight. Just guide and direct each one of us. Bless the ones who weren't here tonight, that they could come back out next week, Lord. I want to thank you for this wonderful weather, and just bless each prayer request that were given earlier. Guide and direct each one of us, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.